Chapter 2. The sun was too bright. It sliced through the hallway window like a laser, hitting my tired eyes and making my headache throb. I hadn't slept. Not really. After the doorknob turned last night, I had thrown the deadbolt and dragged my dresser in front of the door. I spent the next 4 hours sitting on my bed with a hammer in my hand, staring at the wood, waiting for it to splinter. It didn't. The hallway had gone silent. Now it was 9 a.m. The safety of daylight had arrived, but it didn't feel safe. It just felt exposed. Jingle jangle, clack. The sound of a heavy key ring hitting a hip bone announced Mr. Russo before he even turned the corner. I winced. To anyone else, it was just a superintendent walking down the hall. To me, with my misophonia, it was like someone dragging a fork across a chalkboard. Every metallic click spiked directly into my nervous system. Russo rounded the corner. He looked exactly like he always did. A stained gray vest that smelled like stale tobacco, a belly that strained the buttons, and a face that looked like it had been carved out of wet clay and left to dry in a bad mood. All right, I'm here," Russo grumbled. He stopped in front of 4C, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of a hairy hand. "You know, it's too early for this, Elias, and on a Wednesday, I got the boiler in the basement acting up." "I heard someone inside, Mr. Russo," I said. My voice sounded thin, brittle. I tried to stand up straighter, to look like a rational adult, and not a guy who had spent the night clutching a hammer. "Last night, late, they were talking." Russo rolled his eyes. He jammed a key into the lock of 4C. "We went over this. The guy moved out in October, took everything, places bare as a bone." "I know what I heard." I crossed my arms, tucking my shaking hands into my armpits. And they tried my door." Russo paused. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing slightly. For a second, I thought he might believe me. Then he let out a short, wet laugh. "Tried your door? Kid, you live in the city. Probably a drunk from the 3rd floor getting the wrong floor number. Happens all the time." He twisted the key. The lock tumbled with a heavy thunk. It sounded stiff, unused. "Stand back," he said, pushing the door open. I held my breath, expecting a man with a gun, or a man with my face, or a wall of speakers and recording equipment. The door swung inward. Silence. The air that drifted out was stale. It smelled of old dust, dry pine wood, and that specific, lonely scent of a room that hasn't held a living breath in a long time. "See?" Russo gestured with a lazy wave of his hand. "After you, detective." I stepped over the threshold cautiously. The apartment was a mirror image of mine layout-wise, but while mine was cluttered with cables, monitors, and soundproofing foam, this place was a tomb. The hardwood floors were naked and dull. The walls were bare, interrupted only by the ghostly rectangles of lighter paint where pictures used to hang. There was nothing. No desk, no speakers, no high-tech recording gear. I walked to the center of the living room. My footsteps echoed loudly, clump, clump, bouncing off the hard surfaces. It was the kind of harsh, ringing acoustic environment that audio engineers hate. "Check the bedroom," I said, pointing to the open door to the left. Russo sighed, his keys jingling again as he shuffled past me. "Fine, I'll check the bedroom, I'll check the closet, I'll check under the damn floorboards if it gets you to stop calling me." I stayed in the living room. I turned slowly, scanning every inch. The windows were painted shut. Thick layers of white gloss sealed the edges. Nobody had opened those in years. The dust on the sill was thick and unbroken. I looked at the shared wall. The dead zone. On my side, it was covered in acoustic foam in desperation. On this side, it was just a blank beige slab. I walked closer to it. I needed to see. "Empty!" Russo shouted from the bedroom. "Closet's empty too. Bathroom has a dead roach. You want me to arrest it?" I ignored him. I crouched down near the shared wall. The sunlight from the dirty window hit the floor at a sharp angle, illuminating the dust like a layer of gray snow. If someone had been in here last night, moving equipment, standing near the wall, mocking me, there would be tracks. It would look like a dance floor in here. But the dust looked mostly undisturbed. It was smooth, heavy, settled. My heart sunk. Was I crazy? Was it really just the pipes? Maybe the stress of the freelance gigs was finally snapping my brain in half. I remembered the delay, the 1, 2, 3 count. My brain could have manufactured that. The mind is a powerful thing when it wants to be afraid. I started to stand up, ready to apologize to Russo and go find a therapist. Then I saw it. It was faint. If the sun hadn't been hitting the floor at that exact low angle, I would have missed it completely. About 3 inches from the baseboard of the shared wall, the dust was disturbed. It wasn't a messy scuff. It wasn't a smear. It was a print. It wasn't a shoe print. It didn't have the tread of a sneaker or the hard edge of a boot. It was softer, rounded, like someone wearing a thick wool sock had placed their foot there very carefully and put all their weight on it. And it was only one. I frowned, leaning closer until my nose was almost touching the floor. Just one footprint. No trail leading to the door, no trail leading to the window. Just a single, solitary impression of a right foot pointing directly at the wall. Pointing directly at where my desk would be on the other side. It didn't make sense. Physics didn't work like that. You can't just teleport to the wall, stand on one foot and teleport away. Unless they were careful, extremely careful. I looked further back into the room. I squinted. The dust seemed uniform, but was it? Or was it too uniform? I swept my gaze back toward the hallway door. They were faint, almost invisible disturbances, long sweeping lines. Someone had swept the floor. They had walked out backwards, sweeping their tracks away as they went, like a character in a bad spy movie. But they missed this one spot, this one single spot right next to the wall where they had stood to listen to me breathe.
Well, Russo lumbered back into the room, wiping his hands on his pants. Satisfied? Can I go fix the boiler now, or do you want to check the ceiling for ninjas? I stood up quickly, blocking his view of the wall. If I showed him the dust, he'd laugh. He'd say it was a rat. He'd say it was nothing. And if he thought it was nothing, he wouldn't change the locks. But if I knew, that was an advantage. Yeah, I said, forcing my shoulders to drop. Yeah, you're right, Mr. Russo. I'm sorry. Must have been the wind in the vents. It creates weird harmonics sometimes. Russo snorted. Harmonics, right. You artists in your sensitive ears. Get some sleep, Elias. You look like hell. He turned and walked to the door. I followed him, taking one last look at that lonely footprint. It felt like it was burning a hole in my retina. I know you were here, I thought. Russo locked the door behind us. The deadbolt engaged with a heavy click. Don't call me unless there's a fire, Russo grunted, plodding down the hall, his keys singing their jagged metal song. I waited until he turned the corner to the stairwell. Then I rushed into my apartment and locked the door. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was adrenaline. It was anger. He had swept the floor. That meant he was smart. That meant he was real. That meant I wasn't crazy. I paced around my small room. My sanctuary felt violated. Knowing he'd been standing 3 inches away from me, separated only by drywall and paint, made my skin crawl. He had been right there, listening, mimicking. I'm coming over, that's what the voice had said. I looked at my computer monitor. The waveform from last night was still there on the screen, the red visual proof of the voice that shouldn't exist. I sat down in my chair. The leather creaked. Okay, I whispered. You want to play games? Let's play. I opened my equipment drawer. I dug past the tangled XLR cables, past the pop filters, past the spare batteries. My hand closed around a small circular black disc, a contact mic. Normal microphones pick up vibrations in the air. A contact mic is different. It picks up vibrations in solid objects. It's like a doctor's stethoscope, but for buildings. You stick it to a guitar body, you hear the wood groan. You stick it to a wall, you hear everything happening inside the structure. I grabbed a tube of acoustic gel and a roll of gaffer tape. I moved my desk slightly, exposing the bare wall where the voice had come from. I squeezed a drop of gel onto the mic to ensure a perfect seal and pressed it firmly against the beige paint, right at ear level. I taped it down tight with a giant X of black tape. It looked like a wound or a listening device on a bunker. I ran the cable back to my audio interface and plugged it into input 1. I put my heavy headphones on. The noise-canceling circuit hummed to life, sucking the world away. No more traffic, no more refrigerator buzz, just me and the signal. I reached for the volume knob and slowly turned it up. The noise floor of the wall. It sounded like the ocean, a low, grumbly static. I could hear the deep, distant groan of the building settling. I could hear the rhythmic thump of the water pipes Russo was complaining about. I closed my eyes and focused. If he was in there, if he was hiding in the ceiling, or if he had a way of getting in without Russo knowing, I would hear him. If he scuffed a sock against the floor, I would hear it. If he breathed too hard, I would hear it. I hit the record button. The hard drive spun up. "I'm not leaving," I said into my own boom mic, staring at the tape on the wall. "I have terabytes of storage, buddy. Make a move." I watched the green line on the screen. It jittered slightly. Then a sound came through the headphones. It wasn't a voice, it wasn't a footstep. It was a soft, rhythmic scratching, like a nail gently scraping against the other side of the plaster, right where I had placed the mic. Scritch, scritch, scritch. He knew exactly where I had placed it. I didn't pull the headphones off this time. I didn't run. I leaned in, my eyes locked on the jagged little spikes appearing on my monitor. "I hear you," I whispered. The scratching stopped. A moment of silence. Then, clear as a bell, transmitted through the solid connection of the wall directly into my skull, a sound played. It was the sound of a keyboard clacking, fast, furious, typing. I looked down at my own hands. They were in my lap, clenched into fists. I wasn't typing, but the sound in my ears was the unmistakable, distinct rhythm of my typing style. The heavy spacebar hits, the pause after every sentence. He wasn't just mimicking my voice anymore, he was practicing my work. I grabbed my mouse and created a new file marker. Label, The Typist. The war had begun and he had the first shot, but he didn't know one thing. I listened for a living, and I was going to record every single mistake he made until I figured out exactly what he was.